Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. I would like to welcome you to this webinar, which is organized by the Islamic Development Bank on the occasion of the annual meetings of the bank, which are due to take place in a few days' time here in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. We are organizing today's webinar in collaboration with the Federation of Contractors in Islamic Countries, the FOCIC. And since the theme of this year's annual meeting is partnerships to fend off crises, it's appropriate that the title of our webinar today is Partnering for Environmental Protection, the role of contractors in building environmental friendly infrastructure. So before we start our program, let's just have a brief introductory video.
This webinar on Partnering for Environmental Protection, Role of Contractors in Building Environment-Friendly Infrastructure is organized jointly by the Islamic Development Bank and the Federation of Contractors in Islamic Countries. The construction industry plays a vital role in shaping our environment, and it's crucial to consider environmental requirements in all infrastructure projects financed by the Islamic Development Bank. In line with its strategy for 2023 to 2025, the Islamic Development Bank places sustainable development at its core. Collaboration among architects, engineers, building designers, contractors, and material manufacturers is essential to protect the environment. Through this collaboration, the industry can leverage sustainable materials, reduce waste, improve resource efficiency, and ultimately achieve the goal of sustainable and environmentally friendly infrastructure development. It's critical for the Islamic Development Bank, construction industry, and member countries to collaborate and learn from the global construction industry to adopt the best practices that provide cost-effective and eco-friendly design and infrastructure solutions. As we move towards building a sustainable future, we need to recognize the role of contractors in driving environmental protection. This webinar will shed light on the challenges faced by the industry, opportunities for improvement, and best practices adopted globally. Together, we can build environmentally responsible infrastructure that is sustainable and cost-effective.
So let us just have a quick look now at our program for today. We have opening remarks and we have three presentations from three eminent speakers. So the opening remarks and the presentations will take a total of about 1.5 hours, and then we'll have about 30 minutes for Q&A. As shown in the initial slides, we have interpretation in 4 languages, Arabic, English, French, and Russian. That is from the interpretation icon on the bottom right hand of the Zoom screen. And we also have the Q&A for all attendees. They can write questions at any time in the Q&A box. So let us start with opening remarks. I would like to invite the manager of the Project Procurement and Financial Management Division of the Islamic Development Bank, Brother Amir Ghanimir, for opening remarks. Brother Amir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Brother Hisham. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Engineer Brother Zakaria Abdul Qadir, Chairman of the Federation of Contractors from Islamic countries, and also Saudi Contractor Authority. Distinguished representative and member of the Federation of Contractors, dear panelists, distinguished participants, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I am delighted to extend a warm welcome to you all to this Islamic Development Bank Annual Meeting 2023 webinar, where we'll be discussing the crucial topic of partnering for environmental protection, role of the contractors in building environmental friendly infrastructure. The Islamic Development Bank has the commitment to promote environmental friendly infrastructure across its 57 member countries. We continue to promote sustainability and environmental friendliness in all the practices that our construction industry of the OIC countries has to follow. The Federation of Contractors has an important role to play in implementing this green and inclusive and the sustainable agenda. This webinar today will provide a valuable insight and strategies for building infrastructure that is both effective but also eco-friendly. The aligned strategy of the Islamic Development Bank to be implemented during the next 3 years, 2023-2025, places sustainable development agenda at the forefront of development landscape. It promotes green, resilient, and sustainable infrastructure as a key pillar of the strategy. The bank ensures implementation of this agenda through innovative approaches, program partnerships, and scaling up of resources through green financing mechanisms which are being made available. Distinguished participants, brothers and sisters, as you are aware, the critical role the construction industry plays in economic growth and development of 57 member countries of Islamic Development Bank, with the global construction industry valued at approximately 11.4 trillion in 2021 and expected to continue growing at a rapid pace due to population growth, urbanization, and the need for new infrastructure requirement. It is essential that we must focus on building environmental friendly infrastructure. As we move forward, the construction industry must embrace sustainable practices that reduces its environmental impact and make projects more eco-friendly. Contractors and consultants have a pivotal role to play in implementing sustainable building practices, such as designing appropriate solutions, selecting environmentally friendly material, ensuring energy efficiency, conserving the water, managing the waste, and building green space and urban growth that create more livable cities for our communities. By adopting these practices, we can reduce the industry's environmental impact, carbon footprint, and creating more sustainable communities. It is worth noting that construction industry environmental impact is significant, with the sector is responsible for greenhouse gas emission, construction and demolishing waste, and significant energy and the fresh water consumption. We must address these issues ahead and prioritize the sustainable building practices that protect our planet while meeting the demand and economic growth needs of the member countries. Distinguished participants, brothers and sisters, the challenges we face today is how to translate the objective of the green, sustainable, and environmentally friendly infrastructure agenda into reality. These objectives are not only part of the priorities and the policies of the multilateral development banks, but also implemented through their development financing. A critical element in achieving these objectives is the implementation, monitoring, and measurement of the contribution MDB financing is making in terms of creating sustainable infrastructure ambitions in our member countries. MDBs are now integrating these environmental requirements into procurement framework and also procedures that can encourage the construction industry to adopt such a practices. Furthermore, Islamic Development Bank member countries have adopted environmental laws and regulation to protect the natural resources and also minimize the undesirable impact of infrastructure projects on the communities. As we move forward, it is important for us to ensure that we prioritize the adoption of sustainable practices within the construction industry. This will require collaboration between contractor, consultants, multilateral development banks, and beneficiary countries to implement and monitor sustainable infrastructure projects effectively. By doing so, we can create a more sustainable future and build resilient communities that withstand the challenges of the climate change and other environmental issues. Distinguished participants, brothers and sisters, during today's webinar, we are honored to have three distinguished panelists who will be presenting their ideas on three critical topics. First, environmental and social management mechanism and how to embed and in mitigation, translating these objectives into the procurement processes of the multilateral development bank, especially in procurement of goods and work. And thirdly, the role of the contractor they can play in achieving these objectives. In essence, collaboration between consulting solution providers, construction material industry, contractors, government agencies, and local communities is crucial to ensure that infrastructure projects are aligned with their environmental regulation and meet the needs of the local communities. It is widely recognized that sustainable construction practices benefit contractors by enhancing their credibility and reputation as environmentally responsible companies, which gives them comparative advantage to future business opportunities as compared to the other players in the field. While sustainable construction practices may have cost implication for the contractor, but in the long run, it definitely benefits are much higher and it benefits all. Consultant and construction industries players can work together to come up with the innovative design and use adaptive technologies and materials and implement a cost-effective mechanism to support environmental protection in these development projects. By doing so, we need to achieve both economic growth, but also ensure development remains sustainable. Distinguished participants, brothers and sisters, going forward, Federation of Contractors need to play a leading role in guiding the construction industry toward building environmentally friendly infrastructure. Besides making these commitments, concrete actions are essential to achieve these goals. Contractors need to put environmental protection at the core of their work and deliver sustainable infrastructure. By doing so, they need to prepare them in terms of seeing the growing future opportunities, which require the environmental consideration and also developing environmental friendly infrastructure projects globally. Distinguished participants, brothers and sisters, the deliberation during the webinar today will focus on challenges, but also explore the solution and the opportunities for building sustainable infrastructure for the future. By working together and sharing knowledge and expertise in the industry, we can be moving toward a more sustainable practices while creating a resilient future for all. Let me conclude by highlighting the role of contractors in building environmental friendly infrastructure have never been more critical. By working together, we can ensure that construction industries grow in a manner which is sustainable and that our commitment to help create a community that lives in a healthy, safety, and environmental friendly world are realized. I would like to thank you all for joining us today for this webinar, and my special thanks to the panelists as well as the participants, and wish you all a very successful and productive deliberation during this seminar. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. With this, I rest my floor to Brother Hisham.
Thank you very much, Brother Amir, for these opening remarks. So maybe we can have now our PowerPoint presentation up on the screen so that I can introduce our first speaker. So our first presenter will be Luis Porteas. So Luis is an environmental expert with over 35 years experience in large-scale infrastructure projects in over 50 countries around the world. So Luis has hands-on experience in the preparation, implementation, and monitoring of environment, social, and governance policies and management plans, resettlement action plans, and community development projects. Luis, you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just thought I'd have a discussion with you today about some early things that need to happen on environment and social management mechanisms and making sure that we embed mitigation from the very outset. If I could have the first slide, please. Okay, just to set a context for environment management, environment and social management, I think there's some excellent documents on the Islamic Development Bank website, and there's some very relevant recent policies that drive forward the discussions that we're going to have today. The realigned strategy document for 2023-2025 picks up on the urgent need following COVID, following climate change impacts on countries about what needs to happen in the near term. So I thought that the 3 points within that realigned strategy objectives of boosting recovery, tackling poverty and building resistance, and green economic growth pick up the 2 main topics that we're talking about today on environment and the social aspects, with each being reinforcing the other. So that's in the 2 pillars that also come through that strategy about developing green, resilient, sustainable infrastructure, but that has to be done with inclusive human capital. Without the resources, human resources to build it, then it becomes whatever infrastructure you put in could become a white elephant. So it needs to be mutually reinforcing. There's a hugely important role that contractors play from the outset of the concept of a project. So the contractors are a vital part of any development project, from the concept to closure. So in the concept phase, it's important that the contractors, who often come up with the detailed design with the development proponent, the contractors have got to put in the technical aspects, some of the financial aspects, some of the training aspects, but right from the very concept, what is the purpose of what you're trying to achieve with regard to the infrastructure that you're trying to provide, and where is it going? So certainly from an environment point of view, the original location is quite important. So from the concept process, we need to understand the natural built and human opportunities and constraints for that area. So that's one aspect, the physical aspects of the site that we're looking at. There's also the legislative requirements that are a layer over that. What environment legislation and standards exist? Understand even what the emission standards are. From the outset of what you're trying to do. What's the water, noise, air quality, illumination standards that are needed? And there's also environmental, social policy and guidelines that set up some aspects from an environment social point of view, but it also impacts on the technical aspects that you've got to achieve with regard to land take, with regard to emissions, with regard to employment, with regard to value for money. In the procurement process, following the concept process, in the procurement process that I mean here, I mean not just procurement of equipment, but procurement of financial resources. So if you're approaching the Islamic Development Bank for funding, then there's got to be information that's provided to show that you understand what you're doing, that you've combined the concept of the project on the existing natural and human environment, and starting to look at how you're embedding mitigation to ensure that any adverse impacts are addressed right from the outset. You've also got to show value for money. And I would say that by doing the cross-cutting efficiencies and embedding mitigation, usually that results in value for money. And in my experience, because I am an environment and social specialist working extensively with the engineering team, it's fantastic to have a role at the table right when early decisions are being made. So it's not just the technical aspects, but they're including the environment and social. And that will need to be shown if you're seeking financial resources to actually build the project right from the outset. Next slide, please. So leading on from looking at getting finance, aligned with that is a detailed design process. That's usually done through a feasibility study, a detailed feasibility study, bankable feasibility study. And that's quite important because this is when all the knowledge comes together, including environment and social. At this point in time, I will go through this a bit further, but the environmental impact assessment, which brings in the information of that natural environment with what's proposing to be on it, needs to be undertaken. And that's a vital ingredient. It's not just a certification or a license. It's actually the knowledge that helps build the concept, the technical concept of the development. Again, I keep going on about embedded mitigation, but how have you managed to overcome potentially adverse impacts through design, either materials, location, reuse of water, etc. The construction side follows a detailed design, and in the construction side is when you first see the major change on the site. So site clearance, we need to understand that we've made sure we've got our biodiversity information before we do that. But it's also the first time you're going to actually have a lot of resources on site with regard to local labour. So ensuring you've got the skills to do that and the training mechanisms in place to do that is hugely important. In the life cycle of a project, the construction is also very important for phasing and implementation. So understanding the interlinking of clearing the site, storing your topsoil so it can be used later on, protecting areas that might be environmentally sensitive from development need to be interpreted right from the very outset. And phasing, understanding what happens when, is important so that there's value for money in the way that a development is phased. During operations, again, I've put in value for money and training because often that's when the more skilled resources come in to operate the development. And a lot of then the environmental management, given that the site has been cleared and developed, comes into environmental and management and monitoring of what you're doing. So monitoring of your baseline parameters of your air, water, noise, etc., comes in. It is in construction, but it's the constant in operations. And in that phase, it's very much, what are we doing? What did we say we were going to be doing? Let's monitor it. Are we achieving that? To go back to see if you need to change some aspects of the procedures that you're undertaking in operations to make sure that they work. Sometimes they don't. It's not unusual for a project to evolve. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but it's good to actually do that plan, do, check, review cycle to ensure that your project achieves what it's proposing to do. These days, you've also got to think of closure. For infrastructure, it may not close, but sometimes it does. So what are you going to be doing to rehabilitate the site, even the construction site? How can you reuse the materials and the facilities that you've got? There's a lot of materials that are generated during construction and operation. Is there a way to use those? Is there a way to recycle those? All of those things have to go on thinking about, and the ongoing maintenance of the site, including the ongoing monitoring. Next slide, please. What I thought I would do is that there's a very good environment and social safeguards policy put out by the bank in 2020, and it shows the interaction of the goal, what is needed in the pillars, enablers, but I thought I'd go through some of the guiding principles because this is some of the practicality aspects that have particular importance to contractors in my view. And I like the way that this shows hierarchy of thinking and the basis of how we actually achieve the goals. So I'm going to talk to you about risk management, proportionality and sustainability to give a bit more information on where I think it's relevant, where contractors can help achieve those. Next slide, please. I know I've started at risk management, which was to the far right, and I'm from Australia, so maybe you're thinking I'm reading everything upside down. But for me, I think risk management is one of the first good tools to do in your concept phase and when you're thinking about the initial design, because it's incredibly intertwined with what you're looking at, what we think the main impacts are going to be of the project on the natural environment. So the initial risk assessment of looking at likelihood and consequences of different impacts, environment and social impacts, is a really good idea, so that it's showing that you're embedding that risk management right from the outset. And the output of the risk management for environment and social is an impact assessment table, but the inputs into it is looking at what we think the risks will be. And that definitely needs roundtable discussion between the architects, the engineers, the environment and social, the finance team. All of the relevant stakeholders need to be around the table to understand what the interjoined risks are. The initial risks, usually from an environment and social point of view, is the natural environment that we discussed about the project going on. What's the topography, geology? What's the surface and groundwater quality? That's hugely important to understand that before anything happens on site. What's the natural biodiversity, terrestrial, aquatic, critical and sensitive habitats? What are those sensitive habitats with regard to biodiversity? And critical habitats is linked to topography. What else is around there? Because we're not just talking about a greenfield site in a brownfield site. What's the existing urban development, infrastructure, planned development, sensitive receptors to any development that we're going to happen? That can include schools, hospitals, biodiversity areas, etc. What are the transport links around the site? Is there any tangible cultural heritage? That could include shrines, it could include graveyards, it could include holy sites, etc. And also, if there's been development there before, there could be contamination areas. All of these things we need to know and consider in our early risk assessment of what we need to deal with. We also need to look at socioeconomics. Who are the stakeholders? What are the skills? What's the livelihoods and living conditions around the area? The economic viability of the project. And also, do we have to move people if we are required to develop this? Ideally, you wouldn't have to, but in some cases it may be required. If it's an energy project, there may be transmission lines that may be involving resettlement. How can we minimize that? The other important aspect of risk from an environment and social point of view is the governance. What are those legal requirements? What's the political will to support it? And also particularly, I think, in Islamic countries, and I'm working a lot in West Africa, the cultural governance aspects of dealing with those leaders in the community is hugely important to take on their views and make them feel part of the project. The risk then should be looking at what of all of the impacts, what's the risk associated with those and the impacts. And I think to start with risk and having that as a basis is a good way to start. Next slide, please. Risks is also important because we need to look at proportionality. What's the scale of the project? Now, in the Islamic Development Bank, along with other banks, is that there's a different category of different types of projects with regard to the requirements required for environment and social impacts. And category A is the most significant, and it's looking at if the impacts are irreversible, cumulative, diverse, or unprecedented, and whether they're temporary or permanent, and therefore a comprehensive environmental impact assessment is required. In B, there may be some potentially adverse and social impacts, but they're not as serious or irreversible or as cumulative as category A. But even if an environmental impact assessment isn't required, often it still is, then there still will need to be a output of an environment and social impact matrix and mitigation measures to help that development through the construction and operation phases. In category C, where there's likely to be no minimal or adverse environment and social impact assessments, then often standard monitoring procedures may apply. And usually it's health and safety, HSE requirements, and it's still good to have those mitigation measures or procedures in place. In most of the infrastructure, though, it's category A, and therefore the environmental impact assessment is required, including all of that information that's required to go into producing the EIA. Next slide, please. The sustainability management mechanisms are that environmental impact assessment, as I said. But the output is in the environmental impact assessment. The input for that, before that is devised, is all of those baseline studies that you need. So sustainability mechanisms for an environmental impact assessment is establishing an existing baseline before the development occurs. As we've said, the natural physical environment, socioeconomic, legislative, governance, conditions of the project location, and what do we think those sensitivities are. The impacts that may then, the second part of the component is the project that you're going to be putting on that site. What may occur out of that? Remember, we had a look at some of the risks before. So what are some of those impacts and risks? Then how can we proffer some cost-effective and practical, feasible, implementable preventative and control strategies to manage those adverse impacts? We also need to look at beneficial impacts. Often there's employment opportunities, it's a power supply, there's very much beneficial impacts. How can we measure those and develop those? And then the outcome, the final result is developing that cost-effective environment and social management mechanisms to monitor and maintain the mitigation strategies through the lifetime of the project. Being realistic, an ESIA, Environment Social Impact Assessment, in my experience, takes a minimum of 6 months and often 18 months. It definitely needs to be undertaken by qualified specialists, and that's not usually just one. It's specialists with biodiversity knowledge, with socioeconomic knowledge, with stakeholder engagement knowledge. It definitely needs the inputs of the technical engineers. And in many countries, the requirement for an ESIA can only be done by environment specialists or companies that are registered with the government. I think that's been a good initiative because it can improve the standard of the ESIAs undertaken. In my experience, there is a difference between the ESIA that's required at national level and also the additional requirements required by funding organisations like the World Bank and the Islamic Development Bank. The development banks tend to require more things on stakeholder engagement, on biodiversity, on social, with social safeguard policies, and intangible cultural heritage aspects like that. So even if you do get approval, national approval for an ESIA, you need to see what other environmental and social impacts are required by the lenders and also do those for the lending organisations. I would also suggest that you need to do that from the outset so that when you're doing some of your baseline studies, they are capable of also being accepted by the lending organisations. Next slide, please. I just thought I'd put up a slide of the ESI process. So the screening and scoping studies can be done as we're talking about your concept designs and early procurement of funding. They're usually done then, and during the assessment phase is those baseline surveys, which is hugely important in any ESIA. Those baseline surveys are the ones that tend to take up the time in that 6 to 18 months that I was talking about, because often, particularly with biodiversity, you need to do seasonal surveys, wet, dry, spring, winter, etc. And it's also really good to get baseline information over a year for your water quality, which can also change with those seasonal factors, and also air quality if you're in West Africa or North Africa with Harmattan winds, etc. The impact prediction and evaluation is the extension of that risk assessment. So the impact of your identified impacts and their significance. And then what you would do in an impact assessment is say, what's the impact? Then what the mitigation is, and then what the impact is post-mitigation. Who's responsible for that? So that's taking that risk assessment concept all the way through into mitigation. The part of the ESIA is to include an social and environmental management plan. How are we going to manage that? Who's responsible and what? How frequently do we need to do monitoring? How do we report it? The output is the social environmental impact assessment, but the outcome of all that process is information that can be used in the design and costing of the project. It's not just, the environment and social impact assessment isn't just an output in itself. It has a hugely important role in informing how the project is designed, how it can accommodate the environment that it's going into. Next slide, please. The environmental impact assessment is extremely good because it gives you a certification and a license to start construction, so long as you've got the funding to do that. But you also then need to bring out from that something live documents that are able to go through your project through its life cycle. And the environment and social management plans are hugely important to bring out each topic that needs to be managed in its own way through that project life cycle. In my experience, the typical environment and social impact assessments, the vital one is water. The waste, air quality, I've written some of those here, there, carbon, biodiversity, and then also on the social side with regard to security, stakeholder, how you manage grievances, community health, safety and security, that cultural heritage, intangible and tangible cultural heritage, human resources, procurement change, and emergency response and preparedness. So Some of those environment social management plans have changed over the years to be more inclusive of what previously would have been technical documents. So you need to understand that there's no problem in combining your environment and social with technical documents, so long as there's an environmental and social management plan to manage those aspects through the life cycle of the project. Next slide, please. I just thought I'd put in some typical table of contents of the environment and social management plans, just to reinforce what we think would need to be in those. So in the introduction and context setting, you're talking about the development, what it is, how long it's going to last, construction, number of employees. What commitments have you made to either your lenders and in the environment social impact assessment? So it's very important that if you've made those commitments, that it's in that management plan about what you're going to do. You're also bringing back in those regulatory requirements and project guidance. As I said, the lenders also have requirements that need to come into that. So it's really important to have commitments and regulatory requirements. Roles and responsibilities, who's doing what? These days, lots of projects aren't just the development proponent putting it forward, it's a hierarchy of contractors, EPCM, engineer, procurement, construction, management consultants, contractors, the development proponent has those, and contractors in their own right. So it's really important with all of that hierarchy or groups involved, who's going to do what for this particular topic area. Then management processes, I've just given the example of waste categorization. So we have bio waste, we have hazardous waste, we have recyclable waste. What are we going to do with all of those? Then we do specific measures on what we need to do with hazardous waste. How do we mitigate and control those measures? Specific monitoring reporting, how do we report? And we said in the weekly reports, monthly reports, annual reports. It's also important to include training in these management plans. Should it be toolbox talks? Should it be onboarding of new employees into the project? Then how are we going to continually improve our environmental and social management? They're just typical headings that are in there, but just to give you an idea that it's a next step beyond the ESIA to actually properly manage environment and social impacts on site. Now, in my experience, I think it's a good idea for contractors to have a suite of these management documents in their repertoire. So if they're bidding for the document, for the project, it's really important that these ESMPs already exist within the organisation. I'm not saying you just pull it off the shelf. Well, you do take some of it off the shelf, but then you can take that management plan and align it to the project at hand. So the idea then, as contractors, you're using something that you're used to using. It's not new. You understand beyond the ESMP that we've got the pro formas that we fill in to do our checks that make sure that the HSE is done. We've got our checks on the toolbox. We've got checks on working at heights, lifting loads. We've got checks on what we do on water quality. And so it's business as usual that makes sure that then these can actually be implemented. So I think that the suite of ESMPs is a good idea through contractors, whether you're part of an EPCM or development proponent. In some cases, in my experience, it's good to usually use one set, but it depends if the development proponent wants to provide those, the EPCM or individual contractors. But please have those done so it's already embedded in your own organisation that you can bring to this development project. Sometimes the ESMPs are embedded in an environment and social action plan that lenders can require you to prepare. But if you've done your ESA properly and you've looked at some of those contents, there shouldn't be any differences or only minor differences. Next slide, please. I just thought I'd give you an example of a project that I'm working on at the moment. It's a gold mining project in Nigeria. We're the first commercial legal gold mine in Nigeria, but I'm trying to show here on, we have infrastructure associated with that and development with a process plant. You can see in the foreground our camp area, which was all purpose-built, and in the background you can see the process plant area that's because we process the gold at site. One of the things that we did initially on this project was a lot of the site, as you can see the green around, that was a lot of the site was that beforehand. And we had to get a lot of knowledge and on what the natural environment was in the area. And also a lot of that is cocoa trees. So we also had to make sure that we could keep as much of the site as possible in the natural environment to help with our water quality management and erosion control. So right from the very outset, we did some surveys on site using LiDAR, and which helped us identify where the watercourses were. It helped us to identify habitat areas, which helped to focus where we did our biodiversity surveys. We also started doing water quality testing right at that concept stage, and we do monthly water quality testing. We did that first of all because water quality tells you anything. So we're testing surface and water quality. There had already been an environmental impact assessment done on the site, but we went back and did some baseline surveys anyway to bring it more up to date. We also looked at, once we got that environmental information and brought the engineers on board on what we were putting where, we've also built a water storage dam and a tailings dam, as well as the mine itself. We also provide our own energy supply. We also sat around the table together with the engineers and the infrastructure providers and looked at how we would lay out the site. We actually changed the layout of the site so that we were able to better manage water quality on site. So on where the process plant is where we're storing our chemicals. So we made sure that the water runoff from rainfalls could be captured before it was released to the outside water sources. And we also actually, by being more clever about the design, reduced the size of the footprint of the site from 800 hectares to 420. So we almost halved the development site. We also looked to involve the use of compressed gas for our power generation. It started on diesel and then we moved to compressed gas. I know that's not carbon neutral, but it reduced our greenhouse gas emissions from our energy supply by 53%. And we looked at that at the concept and detail design stage. So that's just to give you some ideas about sitting at the table, making those ideas and actually implementing it in practice. Next slide, please. This is, we all are aware of some of the current crises that are happening in the world, and these need to be considered in your designs and in the construction and operation. Greenhouse gas, we need to be looking at that. Water management, we've talked about. A lot of the issues with flooding and in a drought have exacerbated poverty in certain areas, and certainly waste need to be managed and recycled. Involving the community in projects is hugely important. There was a Goldman Sachs study done some years ago that showed most of the major projects failed not because of technical issue, but because of social. So we need to do that even more, being transparent and offering employment opportunities in the construction and operation is hugely important. And as I've suggested, the governance isn't just the formal governance with regard to the political structure, but increasingly it's becoming understanding that cultural governance aspects in the management of a project. All of these things need to be included in environmental and social aspects of your project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louise. So as mentioned, we are organizing this webinar in collaboration with the Federation of Contractors in Islamic Countries. So we are honored to have with us Engineer Zakaria Al Abdelkader. Engineer Zakaria, he is an industrial engineer with over 18 years experience in the contracting and construction industry. So he is chairman of the Saudi Contractors Authority. And in 2022, he was elected as chairman of the Federation of Contractors in Islamic countries. So Engineer Zakaria will deliver his remarks in Arabic. So Engineer Zakaria, you have the floor. You have about 15 minutes, Engineer Zakaria. Please go ahead.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. في البداية باسمي واسم أخواني أعضاء مجلس إدارة الاتحاد المقاولين الإسلامي، أتقدم بالشكر الجزيل للزملاء في بنك التنمية الإسلامي على دعمهم الكبير لدعم قطاع المقاولات في جميع الدول الإسلامية، والدعم المنقطع النظير في تأسيس والأخذ بيد الاتحاد لإن شاء الله قطاع مقاولات أفضل في المستقبل. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين. نبدأ محورنا في مشاركتنا في هذا السيمينار بالكلام عن البيئة والمحافظة عليها في قطاع المقاولات. لدينا أرض واحدة بمصادر محدودة يجب الحفاظ عليها. شهد العالم خلال ال20 سنة الماضية تطورات وتحديات هائلة تتصل بقدرة العالم في الاستمرار والبقاء، حيث شكلت تهديدات الإرهاب والأزمات المالية وموجات التغيير المناخي وتأثيرات ذلك على توفر الغذاء، وأخيراً وباء كورونا والزلازل الذي أودى بحياة المئات في تركيا وسوريا. أبرز التحديات التي تهدد كينونة وصيرورة الدول وقدراتها مجتمعة في تحقيق التنمية المستدامة. من جانب آخر فقد شكلت ثورة التكنولوجيا وبروز العصر الرقمي أهم الفرص اللازمة للتغلب على هذه التحديات والأزمات، وفرصة كبيرة لتطور العالم وترابط جميع الدول كقرية صغيرة بمفهوم العولمة. ولا يخفى على أحد أن تعرض المجتمعات للأزمات يهدد بصورة مستمرة عملية التنمية، سواء في جانبها المادي أو البشري، حيث تسبب الأزمات بمختلف أنواعها خسائر في المنشآت والمرفقات العامة والممتلكات والثروات البشرية والطبيعية، وتقلل كل هذه الخسائر من فرص التقدم في مسار التنمية، حيث تؤثر بصورة مباشرة أو غير مباشرة على الموارد الكلية للمجتمع وما تمثله من ركيزة أساسية من ركائزه. ومن ثم يتحتم علينا أن نفهم بوضوح تحدي التنمية الاقتصادية في مرحلة ما بعد الأزمة، فمن المرجح أن يزداد مستقبلاً تعرضنا لأخطار تلك الكوارث على الصعيد العالمي، ذلك أنه من المتوقع أن تزداد حدة الظواهر الجوية القصوى من جراء تغير المناخ. إضافة إلى ذلك ستزداد على الأرجح أعداد من يعيش منا في بيئات معرضة لأخطار الكوارث نتيجة الانتقال إلى مدن لا تتوفر فيها مقومات الوقاية من الكوارث، أو إلى مناطق جغرافية منكشفة بوجه خاص للأخطار. ففي العقود الماضية تسببت الأزمات في خسائر كبيرة وفي أضرار اقتصادية جسيمة، مما أثر على حياة أعداد كبيرة من السكان وعلى الحكومات والمنظمات في جميع أنحاء العالم. وتعد هذه الأزمات بلا شك عقبات رئيسية في طريق تحقيق التنمية المستدامة، ويتطلب التصدي لهذه الأزمات أن تتوحد جهود جميع العاملين للعمل المشترك، وذلك من خلال وضع صيغ للشراكات بين كافة أصحاب المصلحة. الخسائر الاقتصادية الناجمة عن تلك الكوارث، لوحظ أن الآثار المدمرة المترتبة على الكوارث الطبيعية تصيب بقدر أكبر البلدان الفقيرة من البلدان الأكثر رخاء. ورغم أن الأخطار الطبيعية تطال كل من الأمم الغنية والفقيرة، نجد أن حالات الوفاة بسبب الكوارث التي سجلت على امتداد السنوات ال30 الأخيرة يتجاوز عدد 3 مليون حالة، ووقعت في بلدان فقيرة، ونعزو ذلك لقدرة البلدان الغنية من أخذ التدابير اللازمة لتخفيف من أثر تلك الكوارث والتنبؤ لحدوثها. ويتفاوت الضرر الاقتصادي الناجم عن الكوارث، وتشمل الخسائر الأصول الرأسمالية والبنية التحتية مثل المساكن والمدارس والمصانع والمعدات والطرق والسدود والجسور. ويستنفذ الرأس المال البشري بسبب الخسائر في الأرواح وفقدان العمالة الماهرة والدمار الذي يلحق بالمنشآت التعليمية، مما يعطل الدراسة. وقد تضر أيضاً الموارد الطبيعية للبلد، فالأعاصير تدمر الغابات وتؤدي بالاقتران مع حالات الجفاف إلى انخفاض الخصوبة في التربة. العالم الإسلامي الجميع على متن الرحلة. قال الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم معلمنا الأول: مثل المؤمنين في توادهم وتراحمهم وتعاطفهم كمثل الجسد، إذا اشتكى منه عضوا تداعى له سائر الجسد بالسهر والحمى. تصنف الدول الناشئة والنامية بأنها ذات اقتصادات هشة، وتتنوع معاناتها في مواجهة الأزمات والكوارث الطبيعية وتلك الناتجة عن التغير المناخي. أو الأزمات السياسية والأمنية والمتمثلة في النزاعات العسكرية والمسلحة، أو تلك المتعلقة بمواجهة الأوبئة والأمراض. يتشكل فضاء العالم الإسلامي من 57 دولة إسلامية بتعداد سكاني يقارب 1,600,000 نسمة، إذ تصنف معظم دول العالم الإسلامي على أنها إما من الدول الناشئة أو من الدول النامية، أي أن معظم المخاطر والأزمات على المستوى العالمي تتركز في هذه الدول. إن واقع الحال بالدول الإسلامية يشير إلى توافر العديد من التحديات والمخاطر، والتي توفر بيئة ملائمة لنشوء الأزمات والكوارث، والتي يمكن أن نشير إليها بالآتي: ضعف منهجية التخطيط في المؤسسات والجهات المعنية بالتخطيط التنموي، النمو المتزايد للسكان، الهجرات الداخلية والخارجية، ضعف أو غياب متطلبات الخدمات الأساسية للحياة في المدن، عدم الاستقرار والتوترات الأمنية، غياب التكامل والترابط والتنسيق بين الأجهزة المختلفة الحكومية والخاصة المعنية بالتخطيط التنموي، سيطرة التخطيط التقليدي الذي يغفل التصورات المستقبلية، كذلك غياب المعلومات والإحصاءات الدقيقة والضرورية للتخطيط الحالي والمستقبلي، مثل السكن والتوزيع الجغرافي والموارد وغيرها من الإحصاءات. يشير تقرير منظمة التعاون الإسلامي حول البيئة عام 2021 الذي أصدره مركز الأبحاث الإحصائية والاقتصادية والاجتماعية والتدريب للدول الإسلامية إلى أن المستوى الذي نشهده حتى الآن من التنمية الاجتماعية والاقتصادية قد تحقق على حسب تدهور البيئة، وهذا أمر قد يجعل رفاهية المجتمع عرضة لتحديات كبيرة في المستقبل. فالمعدل السنوي لاجتثاث الغابات على سبيل المثال في بلدان المنظمة شهد نمو من 0.27% خلال فترة 20 من عام 2000 إلى 2010 إلى بارتفاع إلى 0.44% في الفترة ما بين 2010 إلى 2020. بالرغم من كون وتيرة اجتثاث الغابات على مستوى العالمي سجلت تراجعا نسبيا خلال الفترة ذاتها، وفي نفس الوقت يبقى تلوث الهواء من الإشكاليات الكبيرة التي تمثل خطر على الصحة ورفاهية المجتمعات في العديد من البلدان الأعضاء في المنظمة. فقد كان من أبرز الأسباب تسجيل 1,600,000 حالة وفاة مبكر في عام 2019، كما أن البلدان المنظمة عرضة لأخطار يتمثل في استنزاف مواردها المائية، إذ أن 29 بلد يعاني من الإجهاد المائي، و18 بلد منها تبلغ فيها معدلات الإجهاد مستويات حرجة. وتظل آثار تغير المناخ من أكبر التحديات البيئية، إذ أن أكثر من نصف البلدان الأعضاء في المنظمة معرضة بشدة لتغير المناخ في ظل ضعف قدراته في المجال التخفيف من الآثار والتكيف. ولعله من المبشرات بأن الإحصاءات تشير إلى أن البلدان النامية وبلدان منظمة التعاون الإسلامي تحقق نمو بمعدلات أسرع بكثير من البلدان المتقدمة على امتداد العقدين الماضيين، ومن المتوقع أن يتواصل هذا الاتجاه في السنوات المقبلة. وبالنظر إلى التقديرات المتعلقة بمتوسط معدل النمو للسنوات المقبلة، ومن المتوقع أن يرتفع إنتاج البلدان النامية بواقع 5.1% سنويا، وبمعدل يتضاعف 3.5 مرات في عام 2025. وعلى نفس المنوال من المتوقع أن يرتفع إنتاج بلدان منظمة التعاون الإسلامي بنسبة 4.3% سنويا، ويتضاعف حجمه 3 مرات تقريبا خلال نفس الفترة. لذلك فإن هذا الأداء المتسم بارتفاع معدل النمو يتطلب الانتباه أكثر لما يترتب عليه من انعكاسات على البيئة. تعد بلدان منظمة التعاون الإسلامي في المتوسط معرضة لمستويات عالية من الأخطار البيئية، كما أن جاهزيتها للتكيف مع آثار تغير المناخ ضعيفة، وهذا يجعلها عرضة لمستويات تأثر عالية من تداعيات تغير المناخ، ويجعل رفاهية المجتمع على محك. فمتوسط أكثر من نصف البلدان المنظمة من حيث التأثير بتغيير المناخ أعلى من المتوسط العالمي. بالإضافة إلى ذلك تعد 80% من بلدان المنظمة غير متأهبة بما يكفي لمواجهة تداعيات تغير المناخ. وتجدر الإشارة هنا إلى أن مواجهات الأزمة تتطلب جهد مشترك يقوم على تعزيز السياسات الخاصة بالاستجابة والتكيف، وتقوم حكومات الدول الإسلامية بجهود كبيرة في سبيل تجنب مواجهات الأزمات، إلا أن قدراتها الفنية والمعرفية والمادية تظل محدودة. وهنا يظهر الدور الكبير الذي تقوم به المؤسسات والمنظمات العالمية والإقليمية، بدءا من منظمة التعاون الإسلامي والمؤسسات التابعة لها، وما قمنا فيه من تأسيس اتحاد مقاولين الإسلامي للمشاركة في ذلك. ففي جانب السياسات والإجراءات الخاصة بتعزيز التنمية ومواجهة التحديات المماثلة، تقوم الأجهزة المعنية بمنظمة التعاون الإسلامي باقتراح السياسات الإنمائية والإجراءات المناسبة، بينما يقوم البنك الإسلامي للتنمية بتمويل هذه السياسات. ويظل من نافلة القول وكما أشرنا أعلاه إلى أن أكبر مهددات التنمية هي الأزمة بصورة عامة، لذا يصبح من الواجب وضع خطط وبرامج لمواجهة هذه التحديات. اتحاد المقاولين بالدول الإسلامية، الطريق للشراكات. يعتبر قطاع الإنشاءات والمقاولات من أكبر وأهم القطاعات الاقتصادية، لأن أعمال الإنشاءات إن لم تكن العنصر الأساسي في أعمال أي مشروع فإنها ستكون جزء من أعماله بصورة أو بأخرى، والمتمثلة في أعمال البنية التحتية والهيكلية لكافة قطاعات النقل والطاقة والاتصالات والإسكان والتعليم والصحة والزراعة وغيرها من قطاعات. إن قطاع الصناعات الإنشائية هو من أكبر القطاعات الصناعية في العالم اليوم، وتحديداً في العالم الإسلامي، ويستثمر فيه مئات المليارات من الدولارات سنوياً تأتي من الحكومات والمنظمات والمؤسسات التمويلية. ويعمل في هذا القطاع عدد كبير من العمالة بمختلف مستوياتها ودرجاتها الفنية. ويعد قطاع البناء والإنشاء من أكبر القطاعات المتسببة في انبعاثات غازات الاحتباس الحراري، حيث ينتج قطاع البناء والتشييد ما يقارب 39% من انبعاثات الكربون و33% من النفايات. وكما أشرنا سابقاً إلى أن الجهود التي بذلت على مستوى العالم كانت من بينها العديد من المبادرات التي تحاول أن تحث الجميع حكومة وقطاعاً خاص ومنظمات على ضرورة تبني أجندة متوافقاً عليها عالمياً. ولعل أهم مبادرات في هذا الصدد هي أهداف التنمية المستدامة من خلال وضع 17 هدفاً رئيسياً و176 غاية فرعية تركز في مجملها على مواجهة التحديات. وللتعريف بالاتحاد المقاولين الدول الإسلامية، فهو اتحاد مهني يضم كافة الفاعلين في قطاع المقاولات في الدول الإسلامية، ويعمل ضمن إطار منظمة التعاون الإسلامي. إن تأسيس وتنشيط عمل هذا الاتحاد يعتبر خطوة كبيرة لتحقيق الشراكات سواء بين القطاع الخاص في مختلف الدول الإسلامية أو بينه وبين المؤسسات الأخرى المعنية بالبحث والتطوير والتمويل من حكومات أو قطاع ثالث. إن هذا الاتحاد وانطلاقاً من مفهوم التنمية المستدامة بأنه تلبية لاحتياجات الأجيال الحاضرة من الموارد الطبيعية غير المتجددة دون الإضرار باحتياجات ومتطلبات الأجيال القادمة من هذه الموارد، وبدعم من أصحاب القرار ورعايتهم، وبجهود المخططين والباحثين والمهندسين، سيلعب دورا كبيرا في تعزيز التنمية الاقتصادية في الدول الإسلامية. إن مواجهة التحديات الماثلة الآن سواء الناتجة عن التغير المناخي أو انتشار الأوبئة يتطلب من الاتحاد وضع استراتيجيات واضحة للشراكة تقوم على تعزيز مفاهيم الإنشاء المستدام والبناء الأخضر والتصميم المستدام، والتي تعتمد طرقاً وأساليباً جديدة للتصميم والتشييد بحيث تسهم في تقليل الآثار البيئية وتقود إلى خفض استهلاك الطاقة الأحفورية باستخدام الطاقات المتجددة، وخفض انبعاث ثاني أكسيد الكربون، وخفض تكاليف التشغيل والصيانة. كما أن تبني مفهوم الاستدامة في قطاع الإنشاءات سوف يساعد في تحقيق التنمية المستدامة بأبعادها البيئية والاقتصادية والاجتماعية، وسيعمل الاتحاد على وضع هذه الاستراتيجيات وتضمينها كافة المعايير العالمية والاقتصادية، خصوصاً كل المستندات المعيارية الخاصة بالبنك الإسلامي للتنمية، والعمل على ضمن تطبيقها في كل الدول الإسلامية من خلال الاتحادات الوطنية والأعضاء في الاتحاد. ولكي نمضي قدما في هذا التوجه، تعتبر التنمية الاقتصادية والنمو الاقتصادي هدف تسعى لتحقيقه الحكومات والمنظمات بما يوفره من رفاه وجودة حياة، لكونه في نفس الوقت يشكل التهديد الأكبر للبيئة. لكن لهذا النمو أيضا اليد الطويلة في الاستنزاف المفرط لموارد الطبيعة وتدهور النظام البيئي، وسيظل النقاش دائرا لبحث حول أفضل المعدلات التي تكفل لنا المضي قدما في تحقيق معدلات النمو الاقتصادي وفي نفس الوقت الحفاظ على جودة الحياة البيئية. وبالنظر لما مر به العالم من آثار جائحة كورونا وتأثيراتها في تدني وتراجع الأنشطة الاقتصادية، فقد ساهمت هذه العوامل في تحسين الوضع البيئي، أي أن الأنشطة الاقتصادية المختلفة هي المهدد الحقيقي للبيئة ما لم تتم وضع معالجات محددة لتخفيف آثارها على البيئة. وفي ظل تنامي مفهوم إعادة البناء على نحو أفضل، والذي تبنته العديد من المنظمات والمؤسسات الدولية والإقليمية. ينبغي جعل رفاهية الإنسان من الأولويات وليس التركيز فقط على النمو الاقتصادي. ونتيجة لذلك يتعين الاجتهاد في كل مشروع بيئي متعلق بالمناخ يعود بالنفع الطويل على مستوى رفاهية الإنسان. ونود هنا أن نضع بعض التوصيات التي تساهم في تحقيق تنمية أكثر استدامة من الناحية البيئية. الأولى، ينبغي لاستراتيجية التنمية أن تكون متفقة مع الجهود طويلة الأجل المبذولة لتقليل من مستوى انبعاث غازات الدفيئة. ضرورة الاستثمار في تعزيز القدرات على الصمود والتكيف مع آثار تغير المناخ. العمل على اتباع سياسات طموحة لوضع حد لفقدان التنوع البيولوجي. تشجيع الابتكار الذي يعزز التغيرات الطويلة الأجل في السلوكيات. تدريب كافة الفاعلين في الدول الأعضاء بالمنظمة وخصوصاً أعضاء اتحاد المقاولين ببرامج التمويل التنموي للبنك الإسلامي وما يتطلبه من شروط العمل البيئي والمسؤولية الاجتماعية والصحة والسلامة. وبهذه المناسبة نطلق في اتحاد المقاولين بالدول الإسلامية مبادرة المقاول الأخضر Green Contractor، التي تتضمن التزام شركات المقاولين في الدول الإسلامية بمجموعة من الأنظمة والمعايير تعرف باسم الريادة في تصميم الطاقة والبيئة أو الليد اختصارا LEED. وهذا النظام مسؤول عن تصميم وبناء وتشغيل واستدامة المباني الخضراء وتطبيق مفهوم البناء على نحو أفضل، وأن تقوم الاتحادات الوطنية والشركات بالتوقيع على هذه المبادرة. ويصنف المقاولين الممتثلين في العالم الإسلامي كمقاولين خضر، مما يضيف لهم لتأهيلهم. وفي الأخير لابد من إدراك أن مواجهة الأزمات ومعالجة القضايا البيئية على نحو فعال لا يأتي إلا بالعمل المشترك، فثمة حاجة ملحة لتعزيز علاقات التعاون بين بلدان ومؤسسات منظمة التعاون الإسلامي من خلال تبادل المعرفة وإجراء أنشطة للتعاون في مجال الأبحاث والسياسة والإدارة، فضلاً عن التدريب وبناء القدرات. وتعد هذه الأنشطة محورية للنهوض بمستوى قدرة البلدان الأعضاء على التعامل مع القضايا البيئية. في نهاية حديثي يسعدني أن أتقدم بالشكر الجزيل لما نتلقاه من دعم كبير ومقدر من البنك الإسلامي للتنمية منذ تأسيسه، وكذلك الدعم المستمر من حكومة المملكة العربية السعودية التي قدمت كل الدعم للاتحاد من الاستضافة للمقر ولجميع العاملين فيه. شاكر لكم جميعا.
Thank you very much, Engineer Zakaria. Now, before we move to our next presenter, I would like to ask all panelists just to open their videos, their cameras, so that we can have just a quick group photo before we continue with the webinar. So the Zoom admin will take the group photo. So tell us, Brother Ishraq, when you are ready.
Thank you very much, Brother Hisham. Respected speakers, panelists. On the count of 3, can we have a smile, please? 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So for our next presentation, I would like to invite Dr. Al-Hajj Malik Somari. So Dr. Somari has a PhD in civil engineering, and he has more than 25 years experience in project management and project procurement. And previously he worked as a senior procurement specialist in the African Development Bank. And now he's a global lead procurement specialist in the Islamic Development Bank. Dr. Somari, you have 20 minutes. The floor is yours.
Okay, now thank you so much, Brother Isham. Well, let me first thanks all the chairman of this session, very relevant, and all the panel member having been organized this session, and also their commitment to make this session very successful. I may like also to thank all the participants for attending this webinar, highly appreciated. I will take the opportunity to present to you the Green Public Procurement in IDB Finance project, which is a key driver of sustainable procurement. You can proceed for the next slide. Right now, basically, the assessment of the green public procurement should be through a very green policy document, But I think it is not very enough. We have to scale up right now to develop a lot of policy in MDV perspective. And also this assessment will pass through project preparation, project implementation, and downstream project implementation and contract management. And this one also we can use green technology, which will play a big role to assess this green requirement. Right now, moving forward, next slide, please. This one, I want to share this slide with you. As far as it concerns project management, here this slide will compare project coordinator with high impact in environment or green requirement, like waste treatment plant, water treatment plant, hospital, and so on, with a car driver. The car driver will try to overcome all these obstacles through his way to reach out this tunnel in the on the top. Right now, the project management will play the same, the project coordinator will play the same role. He will try as much as possible to manage this risk based on the environmental impact assessment, right? At the level of the country, at the level of the sectors, at the level of the project and executing agency downstream. Right now, on very appropriate risk mitigation in green requirement, environmental agreement will be designed so as to address this risk. But the issue is it is very costly because so as to implement this environmental management plan, we need, I give you just some example moving forward. If I have an hospital, the wastewater of hospital are very specific. I need to set up to design very appropriate pre-treatment plan. This one is very costly before putting the water in the sewage network. Right. I can also design a good water resource protection plan. A good solid waste protection plan, and as well, this one are very costly. That's why the project coordinator has also to manage these resources so as to don't have a cost overrun during this project implementation. He has also to manage the stakeholder, green stakeholder involved in the project processing and project implementation. Here I like to recall this Ministry of Renewable Energy, right, or this Ministry of Environmental. They will be involved to approve the detailed design in environmental requirement, and also during implementation to assist to the weekly meeting, monthly meeting also in the work sites. And also he has to manage this all this donor, because each donor in terms of co-financing, of course, has his own regulation in green requirement. Green requirement, I think he has to also manage this. And downstream, finally, we count on the project coordinator and also all these consultants from Islamic Federation. Besides the Federation of Contractors from this Islamic country, I think to manage all this issue in green requirement, so as to reach out this project objective in terms of output in short term, outcome in medium term, and impact in longer term. But I like to recall the baseline is very important through the framework. Most of our projects, you don't have baseline in this requirement. You can proceed. Right now, this assessment will pass also through a green policy document. I say this one should be better scale up, but because it's not very enough. Next slide, please. Here we have the green public procurement, which will be a key driver under this sustainable procurement, and it will help to reach out this SDG 12.7. What is the definition of this SDG? is to promote sustainable practice so as to be in line with procurement policy of our member country. And in this regard, all MDB consider this green requirement, environmental requirement in their new procurement framework. And downstream, MC also adopted this environmental law, whatever the name, regulation to protect natural resources. What is important and very critical to be underlined, it is many international conference and meeting has been organized by stakeholders in this area to address this issue of climate change. Right, we have this World Climate Conference, the first one organized in Geneva, 1979, this Rio Earth in the summit in 1992, and crossing by, we have finally this COP22 in Marrakesh, 2016, this COP recently organized 27 in Cairo in November 2022, and the planned COP in November 2023 in Dubai. Right now, as far as, next slide, please. As far as it concerns the bank strategy, the bank also aligned to this green requirement. It is covered under its realigned strategy 2023-2025 to cover this green requirement through its third objective, very critical, how to better develop green economic growth, considering this green requirement right now, and also downstream through this pillar one, green, resilient, and sustainable infrastructure. And downstream, a lot of set of document policy as well sustain this strategy element of the bank. We have this bank environmental and social safeguard policy approved in 2019, and of course our new procurement framework which should cover value for money with this non-attribute requirement. April 2019. We have a full-fledged also change policy, climate change policy, which is streamlined and commits the bank to mainstream climate change in its operation, and green procurement will play a leading role on that. And recently, I think the division climate change, they play a very good role. They develop a full-fledged action plan to operationalize all the Paris alignment 2022-2023 to support 57 member countries in mitigation and adapting this climate change. And what is interesting, this action plan is based on the previous action plan 2020-2025. This one, what does it mean? You will have this leverage built, right? And also this climate change also policy 2019. And this action plan also, we reach out a goal of 35 of total funding commitment. And moving forward, moving forward, next slide, please. We develop a set of guidance note, because guidance note, its role is to clarify some relevant topic of our new procurement framework. We refer to the guidance on social, gender, and sustainable procurement 2019. It will help to support GPP consideration, right? We have this guidance note also procurement plan and strategy. We have section 2, which will capture the sustainable aspect. We'll come later on that, and life cycle costs also guidance note will capture this GPP. And lastly, we have contract management guidance note will help to reach outcome in this area and better to monitor KPI in ESS. I think this one is very important, and it is completed by and large by the new standard guideline. Next slide, please. Right now, I'm very happy to share with you a sampling of representative project financed by the bank covering this area of green requirement. We have this green city. I think Dr. Lewis build on that with she share with us this green city. It's very interesting through Bangladesh. You see, Bangladesh is a very interesting copy with a good climate. This one green city will include what is mean to this climate resilient housing, this eco-friendly housing. What are these features of this green city? Let's take the landscape first. That is, all the building will be oriented from north to south, and you have a reasonable distance with good solar protection. What is the outcome? It will give a very good thermal comfort inside. As far as it's coming to the construction building, right now we can benefit for laterite stone that reflect 80% of solar radiation or solar transfer. We can have also in terms of bricks, what is called a baked clay bricks. This one, this baked clay brick, we can improve by Simon and improve by Simon 3% or so as to improve the resistance, right? This one also, what is its characteristic? He can delay solar transfer. And we have also some very specific glasses that is called heat reflective glasses. It can reflect more than 80% of our solar transfer. And also we can benefit for energy management. This one, I mean the green energy. We can build on renewable energy like solar, wind, and so on. And also we can benefit for water management. And water management is very critical. This one came from that is the water, the raining water. We can save water and this and reuse rainwater and control and manage it, and this one can serve to water garden, right? We have the waste management possibility also. It will help to recycle this one. We can also have energy recovery from this waste water or waste solid, right? And also we can create a very great job. We can build on what is called also solar protection and acoustic comfort and visual comfort through this green city. Okay, you are welcome for the next slide, please. This also, I'm very happy to share with you a sampling representative of a bank project covering green energy. This one is the good bank requirement. I explain you yearly in the bank realignment strategy. We have sub project with green energy, mainly in solar area. It could be hybrid also, fuel and solar, but most of the case it is solar. We have some project in Africa, because here in Africa we have the sun everywhere. In Mali, in Chad, in Burkina Faso, and so on. What is interesting, the bank is preparing this renewable energy cooperation program, full-fledged program, and this program will be implemented through project-wise. What is the target of this program, and in terms of objective, is to contribute to reaching the target electrification. It will be scaled up to electricity universal access to university 2030 in member country in Africa by providing sustainable and reliable and affordable green electricity. What are the target area? Household, commercial, and industrial target. At least 100,000 households. This one is very critical in terms of magnitude, and also it enables green economic growth. And it will also enhance low carbon energy. What does it mean? That is to reduce greenhouse gas emission and to create a very full-fledged job opportunity. Next slide, please. Right now, green works, it is a very critical and update requirement in this area. That's why this one I am happy to share with you some bank project covering this community participation and this resource-based approach and nature-based solution. That's why this green work will play a very critical role in local adaptation to climate change. How to refer it? To physical activity for development and maintenance of infrastructure, ecosystem, or community asset. And this one, what is the outcome is to have positive environmental impact. You see, it is a good added value. And green works like soil conservation, reforestation, and flood protection also are highly labor incentive. And what is the asset? It will give green works to vulnerable groups, and also will contribute to rehabilitation and environmental and improvement. And also, what is important in the future, upcoming months or years, it is important to build a good strategy to see the best way to identify and develop intervention in this area that reduce future impact in climate change while providing employment opportunity and downstream productive capacity of ecosystem. And another strategy also very important is how to develop green works using a local resource-based approach and natural-based solution. And in terms of outcome and achievement, it will give local participation for locally available skills, technology, and material. Welcome for the next slide. Right now, as far as it concerns project processing and project implementation, here during project processing, there are two tools. I refer to feasibility study and project preparation facility. For project, it will help to increase quality at entry. You see, project facility, it is inside the process as a project. You will run the project inside what is called a letter of PPF with the country. It will help you to design feasibility study and some design, some manual and so on to make ready the process, right, the project. And also the procurement strategy will give you also good procurement approach, including market engagement, management risk, including procurement arrangements to consider GPP. What does it mean? We have the section 2. It will help you as procurement specialist or project coordinator or executive agency who will prepare a strategy to review the renewable energy regulation of the country or environmental act of the country in this area. And right now it will help you to leverage in your project. What is important also, the bank should proceed for a full-fledged assessment of the existing agency. Does the existing agency have enough skills by carrying out in the similar project in green requirement? This one is important. Does the existing agency has dispute resolution skills in this area of green requirement to be assessed is also important. In terms of complaint handling, because right now environmental aspect in greenhouse, we have a lot of complaint from the contractor and so on. We'll come on that to handle from this capacity of the existing agency. And also moving forward, the qualification of the staff of the existing agency in terms of the expert, if they meet the profile requirement of this project staff in terms of environmental, economy, as also in terms of tool. We'll see in technology we have some DeboCalc tool which will help us to assess environmental aspect like COD performance ladder. This one are very software, a very sophisticated one to assess this environmental aspect. And also you need a performance contract agreement from the project coordinator and the staff to consider this KPI in a green agreement. And logical framework which will cover the output. I told you, but baseline is important outcome and of this green requirement. Okay, next slide, please. As far as it concerns project implementation, next slide. Good planning is very important to support green public procurement. Why? Because most of our projects, we face this issue of planning. What happens? Sometimes we select the contractor before the supervision consultant. This one is a very bad planning. That's why it is important to stress all that. The importance to select the supervision consultant. It will help you even to be part of the evaluation committee or procurement committee to assess this requirement of the contractor, right, to meet this environmental and green aspect. And also before doing the notice to proceed or in the side work, it will help also to approve and to review and approve the environmental management plan and the contract management plan with KPI in ESS. You see this one, that's why this good planning of the supervision council is very important. Another issue in planning we are facing, sometimes we have side works whereby we can have flooded area during rainy season. What happened? This works will be happen during rainy season. The contractor is very smart. He will anticipate and cost in his cut in his cost price specific transportation of his supply, his material, concrete, reinforced steel, and so on in the side with a specific transportation means like truck and so on. And what is the outcome? It will increase your contract amount. And I think it is better to plan this works if you have flooded area side work during the dry season. We have this issue of land acquisition also. It will pop up for this better planning aspect. Land acquisitions, all the MDVs, they put it as effectiveness condition of the finance agreement, or worse, or better, that is as a specific condition of other condition in the finance agreement before first disbursement or other condition. Why? Because it should be processed before the contractor will accept to side work. Most of the case in our project is not the case, but as I say, so as to gain time, they want to plan all this activity together. And right now, what are the tools as catalysts to help you to do a good planning? We have the procurement plan, which will help you to plan in the procurement process and the contract management side. We have the grant chart. The grant chart is a good tool because it was developed by the American citizen when they were constructing this Hoover Dam, and this Hoover Dam in 1935. And right now, we developed this tool. It's very important to be used in project management, and it could be split through another tool called the work schedule breakdown, another tool called the PRT, Performance Evaluation Review Technique. We count on you as project coordinator, as supervision consultant, to run very good planning in your on your procurement activity. Moving forward, next slide, please. You can proceed.
Dr. Somari, can you just please close in about 2 to 3 minutes, please?
3 minutes.
Yes, please. Yes, just go ahead, Dr. Somari.
Thank you so much. Let me proceed. Right now, as a member of Federation of Contractors, we count on you to submit a good bid comprising this requirement, very important, like an environmental social management plan, a full-fledged one in good quality, management strategy and implementation plan to manage the environmental risk, code of conduct which will be applied to your personnel, and later you have to train your personnel on this code of conduct, right? You have also to meet the green requirement through the technical specification. You have also, I think, to provide, if needed, a traffic management plan to ensure safety in local community. This one, we can give the example of a road project, to give also water resource protection plan to prevent contamination of drinking water, and also to meet the criteria in sustainable in green requirement when submitted your bid, and to submit qualify expert in green like environmental, special, renewable energy expert, and so on is needed. That is through your bid to be assessed to meet the qualification criteria. And also it is important to submit based on the environmental requirement assessment, a performance security right now to cover this environmental requirement is very important, and also to submit before contract signature a very full-fledged contract management plan with KPI in this area. Welcome to the next slide. Very good. This one, all this requirement during the contract management should be implemented when we notice to proceed to start the work, right? That's why we need to monitor and implement this traffic management plan by the supervision consultant. This one I'm thinking about Dr. Luis on that, to implement water resources protection plan to prevent contamination, and also to implement and monitor from the consultant, to implement from the contractor a full-fledged contract management plan with comprising this component: environmental risk plan, management plan, role and responsibility, green stakeholder engagement plan, green works to be supervised, performance assessment plan with this KPI and environmental performance security to be submitted. And I think if you meet all these requirements, we can issue out good provisional acceptance and final acceptance and take over a very sustainable infrastructure. Okay, proceed for the next slide. Right now, this one is very important. I'm happy and I may like to share this slide with you, how green technology as enabler will support procurement and monitor. This one, we can have this EGP, very important to monitor UNEP sustainable procurement indicator. We have 13 level 1 indicator, 14 level indicator to monitor this and to assess this sustainable procurement indicator. Right now, the climate change, the adaptation and mitigation can be monitored through green characterized in procurement to reduce this greenhouse gas emission. We have also the less greenhouse gas emission through procurement plan and target adopted. And right now also this climate change can be monitored through very full-fledged and appropriate and fit for purpose environmental character which contribute to climate mitigation. And lastly, very important, we can assess whole life cycle cost through debug. That's why I encourage you to use this software, very important and very sophisticated and very relevant to assess and monitor your environmental impact of civil engineering construction. And the last one, CO2 performance later to assess this effort on contract to reduce CO2 emission. And last slide, please. But we have issue and a big question mark. What does it mean? That is, even this technology will help us to support green requirement, but we find out this information technology generate itself alarming e-waste. This one is a critical one also. What does it mean? While information technology help us to achieve GPP, information technology should also help itself greening its our supply chain. It is a big issue. That's why there are some big company, ICT big company in India and South Korea to build and to design green initiatives so as to address this issue of e-waste. We count on you, brother, sister, and brother, and all our member countries from the Federation of Contractors, or our PMU staff and project coordinator to meet all these green requirements, so as to have a good project delivery downstream, good takeover, and good sustainable infrastructure. I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm at your disposal for needed question. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Dr. Somari. So now for our last presentation, last but not least, I would like to invite Dr. Malik Dongola. Dr. Malik, he has a PhD in civil engineering and over 35 years experience in the contracting and construction industry. He is the ex-president of the Sudanese Federation of Contractors, and also he served as the vice president of the Arab Federation of Contractors. And currently he is the acting secretary general of the Federation of Contractors in Islamic countries. Dr. Malik will deliver his presentation in Arabic. Dr. Malik, if you can please try to finish in about 15 minutes. so that inshallah we can take a couple of questions. Please go ahead, Dr. Malik.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أود أن أتقدم شكر للإخوة في إدارة البنك الإسلامي للتنمية على دعمهم المستمر لاتحاد المقاولين بالدول الإسلامية، وأخص بالشكر الأخوين عامر مير والدكتور هشام مرغني على صبرهم وجهدهم المتواصل لنجاح برامج الاتحاد، وأشكر السيدة لويزيانا ودكتور الحاج مالك لمشاركتهم في هذا السيمينار. وأود أن أوجه التحية للسيد رئيس الاتحاد وأعضاء مجلس الإدارة وأعضاء الجمعية العمومية المتواجدين معنا بهذا السيمينار من أكثر من 20 دولة إسلامية منضوية تحت هذا الاتحاد. وكذلك أقدم التحية للمشاركين بالسيمينار من الخبراء والمهندسين، وأخص منهم بالشكر المهندس طارق حمزة الخبير بصندوق أبو ظبي للتنمية وكل المشاركين. وكنت قد عددت هذه الورقة قبل اندلاع الأحداث الأخيرة في بلاد السودان، والذي أتمنى له الأمن والأمان، وإلا كنت أدركت بهذه الورقة الآثار المدمرة للحروب، والعالم يسعى للتنمية والسعادة. ومن هنا أدعو أعضاء الاتحاد منذ الآن للمشاركة في عملية الإعمار، والتي يمكن أن تبدأ عقب الوصول لوقف الحرب، والتي يسعى كل السودانيين الآن لإيقافها. أنا هو سلايد بليز. يعني يسعى العالم إنه أن تحقق مشاريع البناء والتشييد منافع اقتصادية واجتماعية، وتحدث فارقا هائلا في إنتاجية الاقتصاد والصحة والإسكان والتعليم والصناعة والزراعة والسياحة وغيرها. ومع ذلك فإنه من خلال مرحلة الإنشاء أو الاستخدام تكون هناك آثار بيئية وصحية واجتماعية تلوث الأرض أو هجرة أنواع من الكائنات الحية أو الملوثات العضوية. البنك الإسلامي للتنمية شريكنا الأساسي وضع في كراسة المناقصات النمطية للأعمال الصغيرة في حدود 10 مليون دولار في الصفحة من 119 ل 2 وبعدها متطلبات البيئة والمسؤولية الاجتماعية والصحة والسلامة. وطالب صاحب العمل أن يكون المسؤولية الاجتماعية موجودة لكل أطراف المشروع الذي يجب إنشاؤه. وفي هذه اللوحة الأولى نتكلم عن تحقيق متطلبات البيئة، ولتحقيق متطلبات البيئة لابد أن نتبنى تصميمات محسنة تتطلب مواد أقل، وكذلك أن أفضل النفايات أثناء التشغيل والصيانة وتقليل استهلاك المياه، مع العمل على غرس الأشجار واتخاذ التدابير تخفيف الآثار على البيئة، واستخدام المواد الطبيعية قليلة التأثير، وإعادة اكتشاف طرق البناء التقليدية، وإجراء مراقبة بصرية للغبار يوميا، مع استخدام أفضل ممارسات البناء لتخزين المواد الخام، وتبني ممارسات البناء المستدامة، وتوظيف التكنولوجيا في قطاع البناء. Next please. إن إحضان تقنيات البناء الحديثة لتقليل النفايات وتوفير الطاقة يحسن من كفاءة البناء، ويشجع على وندعو لتشجيع استخدام المساليب البناء الجديدة والأكثر كفاءة. إننا نسعى لأن تكون كل المشاريع يتم لها عمليات تقييم للأثر البيئي واعتماد الموافقات البيئية أساسا لترخيص المشاريع. إن العمل على إنشاء مراكز أبحاث قادرة على اكتشاف الآثار التراكمية للآثار البيئية له يعني أثر جيد على البيئة عموما. لا بد أن تكون هناك آلية لترخيص المكاتب الاستشارية العاملة في مجال تقييم البيئة والآثار البيئية. لتحقيق متطلبات السلامة والصحة لا بد من التخطيط العلمي لموقع المشروع قبل تنفيذ الأعمال، وإعداد إجراءات منظمة لتحديد المخاطر في مكان العمل، وتضمين برامج الصحة والسلامة في حسابات تصحيح بيئة العمل. وتبني استراتيجية واضحة تضمن الأمن والسلام في واقع البناء، والإشراف والتوجيه والمتابعة، ووضع تدابير أمنية مناسبة للمواقع، والقيام بعملات دورات سواء تخصصية أو عامة للعاملين، وتوفير كافة وسائل الحماية المتعلقة بظروف العمل ومحاكاة الواقعية وإدارة الموقع وتحليل الأعمال. إن المبادرة التي أطلقها الأخ رئيس الاتحاد ليكون هنالك المقاولين الخضر يعني ستكون لها أثر جيد في وجود مقاولين لهم الهمة في أن تكون كل المشاريع خضراء إن شاء الله. Next please. إن اتخاذ الإجراءات الإدارية للسلام والبيئة مهم جدا من خلال التفتيش على مدى التزام العمال بمعايير السلام في موقع العمل. وهنا نجد أن شركات المقاولات كلها لديها مفتشين موجودين داخل الهيكل التنظيمي لهذه الشركات. إن عمل تقييم وتخمين وتحليل المخاطر سواء لمقر العمل أو الآلات أو الواجبات مهم جدا لأن يكون المقاول لديه القدرة لإنجاز مشاريع ذات بيئة موافقة للبيئة إن شاء الله. إن إجراء التحقيقات في حوادث السلامة المهنية مهم جدا، وعمل الدراسات الميدانية عن أسباب الحوادث مع مراعاة المخاطر الاجتماعية التي تنتج من تنفيذ المشروع، وكذلك استخدام التكنولوجيا في إدارة السلام. إن إجراء صيانة دورية لمنشآت البناء والآلات والمعدات لتقليل احتمالية الضوضاء، والتحري على الموافقة المسبقة لمديري المشاريع على أساس أن يكون استراتيجية وإدارة وتخطيط الخطط والتنفيذ موافقة للبيئة. Next please. إن تحقيق متطلبات المشاركة الإجتماعية يبدأ لابد من أن تكون هنالك مشاركة مجتمعية، وتبدأ بتحديد أصحاب المصلحة الرئيسيين والتواصل مع الغريبين من المشروع، وتطبيق أساليب جديدة في التقييم على أسس تتوافق مع الظروف البيئية والاقتصادية والاجتماعية والسياسية الساندة، مع عمل دراسة لتقدير التأثر الاجتماعي بالمشروع بالطريقة التي يحاكي بها المجتمع. إننا نعمل في مجتمعات في أفريقيا وفي آسيا فيها يعني الثقافة ليست بها متوفرة، فلا بد أن يكون للمقاولين الاستعانة بهذه المجتمعات والعمل على رفع الكفاءة بتاعت التفكير وتحسين العلاقات بين المجتمع والمعنيين وتشجيع المشاركة الاجتماعية والمجتمعية، مع عمل تقييم أثر اجتماعي واضح. وأهم شيء في ذلك قيام الجمهور بنية إقامة المشروع وأهميته، وعمل المقابلات الشخصية وأسلوب الاستمارة والاستبيان، والعمل بمبدأ المشاركة والتشاور. Next please. إن إشراك كافة الأطراف التي يجب أن تكون لها دور مؤثر في المشاركة الجماهيرية من نقابات أو اتحادات أو غيره أن تكون مفهومة وواضحة الخطوات. وهذه المشاركة المجتمعية مهمة جدا لتقييم الآثار، لا بد أن تكون معتمدة من الجميع. إن الاهتمام بالعوامل المؤثرة والأكثر تأثيرا على فعالية المشاركة المجتمعية يعتمد على المديرين المشروع والمنفذين اللي هو المشرفين عليه. لا بد من فتح قنوات اتصال مع القائمين على المشروع والمستفيدين من المشروع، وتجنب البناء من مواقع تضر بالسكن أو البيئة. ولا بد من توفير مساحة ملائمة للحياة البرية. إن التشاور المجتمع المحلي والمساهمين المعنيين الآخرين حول التصميم مهم لإنجاح أي مشروع. Next please. إن عدم التسامح مع الأنشطة غير المشروعة مهم جدا، بحيث يجعل المشروع ذو أثر بيئي وأثر منظور على المستفيدين منه. لا بد من إدماج منظور المساواة بين الجنسين وتوفير بيئة تتيح للنساء والرجال فرصا متساوية. لا بد من التعاون مع المستخدمين النهائيين للأشغال والسلطات المعنية والمسؤولين والسكان، مع عدم التمييز عند التعاون مع السكان ومنهم الفئات الهشة والمحرومة. واستنادا لما ذكر في أن المشاركة الجماهيرية هامة جدا، حيث هي أداة لتقييم وتقويم عمل المشاريع وتحسين أدائها واستمرار عملها مع المحافظة على البيئة والتخفيف من الآثار السلبية. دي كانت آخر سلايد. أنا حبيت إنه أركز على حاجات بسيطة لأنه الزمن كان حيكون ضيق، وأنا بشكر البنك الإسلامي للتنمية والمشاركين جميعا، وشكرا جزيلا لهم.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malik, for this succinct and focused presentation on what contractors can do, to protect the environment. Very much appreciated. You saved us the time for some questions. So I would like to invite my colleague Daouda bin Omar, who is the manager of the Climate Change and Environment Division here at the Islamic Development Bank. Daouda has some remarks and possibly one or two questions. Brother Daouda, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all presenters for this very interesting discussion. So, as you know, the Climate Change and Environment Division is overseeing the environmental and social safeguard function, and this discussion is really something showing that we will need at the bank level, of course, to have all the machinery in place to be able to operationalize what has been presented here. You can see the link between procurement, environmental and social safeguard policy supervision, and also the role of the executing agency in this whole process. So, meaning the need for streamlined approaches, the need for looking back at our project cycle and seeing the time needed to develop a solid and comprehensive environmental and social management plan, which is building on a solid ESIA. It means time. It means resources that need to be available. It needs a clear set and definition of responsibilities among the different teams inside the bank, but also outside with the external partners, including the executing agency and the contractors. And what we said here in terms of monitoring as well is very important. So at the design stage, how do we make sure that we are having this in place and that we are approving very solid projects that are embedding these assessments and mitigation measures, and also during the lifetime of the project, how it is monitored. I think it's very critical. So we have a lot of work. We have a lot of work ahead of us, and also we need to make sure that what we are doing is fit for purpose. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are not trying to set a big machinery for some types of projects where it might not be needed. So we need to have something agile, fit for purpose, and also very open to the consultative process, open to the public for transparency purposes. So we are going to work within the bank with all of our colleagues in the respective units to make sure that financial, human resources and also processes are in place to be able to to achieve this very nice picture that we have been showing here during the last two hours. So I thank you. I think we don't have enough time, but I would be very happy to hear from you what are the current good practices, maybe from other MDBs based on your experience, if we have time to talk about it. Otherwise, thank you, and we will connect offline, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Dawuda. So I will call upon my colleague also, Khalid Abdurrahman. Khalid also has years of experience in ESIA studies, and currently he is operations team leader in the regional hub of Cairo. So Brother Khalid, please go ahead with your intervention.
Thank you very much, Brother Sham, for providing us this opportunity to provide some remarks and comments, maybe on the more on the technical level rather than the strategic level that already handled by the panelists. In fact, first allow me to express my gratitude to the panelists for their insightful presentations and of course, stimulating discussion. In fact, I know that this is a specific forum or webinar for contractors, and I wanted just to highlight what could be kind of roles that can play or can the contribution that can play at the procurement stage level, since this webinar is being presented by our procurement function. And at the same time, on the other side, we have the contractors who are supposed to listen and act. I just want to, from my background, previously as environmental engineer and at the same time now as an operation team leader, just wanted to shed the light or highlight some very important details for the contractors to be aware of or to consider during the procurement process. So I just wanted to take a conventional case of a category A project where we have normally the design is ready or done by a consultant, and we have a full-fledged environmental social impact assessment and environmental social management plan, as highlighted by Luis and by Al-Haj Malik Somari and by Dr. Malik and all of the panelists. They highlighted the importance of having this documentation in place, preferably beforehand, in order to help the project proceed effectively with regard to saving the environment and protecting the environment. So in this type of projects, normally I've come across projects that the executing agency or the client, they attach the environmental and social management plan to the which is the ideal case, to the bidding documents, which showing clearly all those technical requirements that you have talked about in the different presentations. And ideally, the contractors, when they prepare the offers, they should cater for those provisions in the environmental and social management plan, and they have to be aware this has an implication on the specifications and the cost bill of quantities if there is any detailed design to be provided afterwards during the implementation. So this is very crucial because it has a cost implication, and here comes all with the issue of disputes and claims. So contractors need to be really careful and sensitive towards these. It's not just a theoretical document, because normally these documents require some actions to be done, and this has to be catered for and translated into a cost sometimes, and sometimes into methodology. And pricing for that is very important when pricing for this environmental and social management plan. And in case these ESMPs are not clear in terms of reflection into the BOQs or the specifications or the project design itself, then the contractor should be able to provide or to ask for some clarifications, or maybe they may take this further in the negotiation stage before the contract signing. But it is very important and critical, in fact, to discuss these issues or to raise these issues before the contract signing, just to avoid any kind of unclarities after when we're starting the implementation or after contract signing. For instance, just a small example for that, the contractors or bidders need to demonstrate how they will manage the discharges or effluents, as well as the emissions that resulting from the different construction activities, especially in the mega projects and complex infrastructure projects, and as well as the site installations, which is normally the first thing the contractor is doing on site at the mobilization stage. This should provide details on the type of concrete plants. I presume this would normally comes with the methodologies when they provide offers or technical offers. It should come with the clarification or clarity on the proposed operational procedures for whatever plants that they want to install, including those concrete plants, because especially those involving chemicals materials, because with the influence of those plants, lots of chemicals goes out and cause harm to the soil and cause harm to the workers who are working on those plants or around it at least. And what could be the operation procedure for that? Additionally, they should clarify how they plan to monitor the water quality and of the surrounding natural streams, for example. Sometimes, like the camp showed by construction camp showed by Luis, I'm sure there's a lot of biodiversity and sensitive environment around it. So natural streams and water flows, it need to be monitored, and contractors or bidders, while preparing for bids, they need to submit a clear methodology or clear procedures how they are going to monitor this. And this has been highlighted in different presentation, how they will manage their solid waste and so forth. As I said in the beginning, it's very important to clarify those issues before even starting the formal mobilizing site, because I had an experience where we come to a situation that we start working in even mega kind of complex infrastructure projects, and we start discovering that there is a problem of effluence here, there's a pollution there, and because the contractor was not aware enough that this has to be priced, and then they start providing claims for extra money or for extra contract amount, for extra or variation orders sometimes, to change the wastewater system or to divert the wastewater system to another technologies and so forth. So it's very important to be, I'm just taking the case of a conventional kind of project where the design is prepared by a consultant, and then bidders or contractors have to provide their offers accordingly. And at the same time, environmental social impact assessment and EMPs are there in place. I know I'm aware of the fact that there are other type of contracts where the contractors can involve in a turnkey contract or design, build, and operate contracts where the contractor has to take the whole risk and responsibility, and that has a different kind of pricing and risk assessment from the contractor side when they provide their offers. But at least the majority of our projects falls within the category of conventional project, where we assume that things are ready, and then contractors are supposed to provide the offers accordingly. So just take that remark as a reminder. I know we have professional contractors in our regions, but sometimes we need to remind ourselves those are very sensitive details when it comes to costing and pricing and so forth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Khalid. Really well taken point, based on your previous experience. Very much appreciated. I think we have run out of time. So I will give maybe the manager of the project procurement division, Brother Amir. I believe you are still there. Maybe you'd like to say a couple of words just as some closing remarks.
Thank you, Brother Hisham, and I would like to thank really the panelists, our participants, and the expert who have contributed for this webinar. Although I think this 2-hour session is not enough to capture the multifaceted dimension of the challenge that we have, but I think overall we have come to a few conclusions that we need to move forward with a very comprehensive collaborative approach. I think it is not a one man, the one area where we need to work. We need to work with, in terms of the financing instrument, our experts in the field, our consultant, contractor, most important, the government and the communities, which will be ultimate beneficiary and effective of these projects, how to make it more sustainable. I think whatever time, effort, resources that will put in these projects, I think at the end, long-term gains outweigh all this effort that we'll be putting together for this. I think there's no one-size-fits-all approach. I think each project has very different dimension, very different complexities and the nature. I think we remain open to the solution which are fit for purpose and which can deliver a better value for these projects going forward. I think we have all the resources, tools, and also expertise and solution. I think what we need is a commitment at the highest level. Unless there is no political will, even having all the solution will not be able to deliver us the result that we are aspiring. I think what we are looking forward is a journey. I think setting a direction, and we take a gradual step which will reach us to a destination that we are all aiming. Although maybe it will not be a journey which will be smooth, a lot of ups and downs, but I think what we have the commitment, ownership, I think we'll be able to reach on this one. So I think let me conclude by thanking our guest, Brother Zakaria Abdul Qadir, for the chairman of the Federation. A lot of responsibility for him. I think we need to educate our consultant contractors and build their capacity, making them aware that how value they can bring it through these sustainable solutions and bringing the infrastructure which is sustainable going forward. A lot of work has to be done both in terms of the awareness, but also building their internal capacity to deliver the solution which are required by the different projects that are financed by the MDPs and the other donors. I think my special thanks to the 3 panelists, Dr. Louise, I think for her very insightful presentation, but also with a lot of wisdom and the experience she is bringing into these thoughts she has presented with us. And also Dr. Malik Dongala, although he has been in a very difficult situation, our prayers for all the people in Sudan to get out of this situation, to be living like a noble and the normal life, especially the people who have challenges both in terms of the resources and also in terms of the responsibilities they have. My colleague, Dr. El-Hai Sumare, I think he is a very strong proponent of moving toward the green procurement, which has to play a very critical role in translating all these concepts into the procurement process. If you don't make it part of the procurement process, I think getting it implemented is very difficult. I think lastly, the major challenge we have in terms of having the clear KPIs, parameter monitoring mechanism at the end, we should be able to measure what we do. If we cannot measure it, then I think setting this ambition and then not showing any contribution will be a challenge for all of us. So let me thank, I think, especially our moderator, Dr. Hisham. He has been the force behind these webinars, putting together the content as well as I think the contributors and the panelists. I'd like to extend my vote of thanks to all of you, the participants especially, I think, who spent their valuable time globally joining us from across the world to attend this seminar. So with this, I would like to conclude the seminar with the vote of thanks to all of you. I think if we need to take one picture with the group, Brother Ishaq, is it possible before we conclude the seminar, have a group photo with all the participants as well as the panelists?
Yes, indeed, Brother Amir, we can definitely have a group photo. I request all our speakers and panelists to turn on the video. Perfect, thank you very much. Gentlemen, 1 moment, on the count of 3, can we have a smile, please? 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much.
With this, thank you very much once again, and wish you a very happy times ahead, and definitely will be engaging on various professional forums to take this agenda forward. So thank you. Have a good day. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.